Um, just want to clarify, so with this calendar, as of December 31st is when we're going to be down to just you and Chris Stevens, because Piper's last day is the 30th.
Correct.
We would not have anyone manned at the south side, and you and Chris would cover this north side.
Yeah, this is a template, it's not hard and fast, I can switch some of the days, but I tried to keep Chris on his normal rotation.
Okay.
And plug Kevin in where we could use him the most days
Okay.
instead of the least. You'll notice on there I have a red asterisk. Those are days that, for instance, on the 5th, Chris is scheduled to work. However, Kevin is available, and you'll notice the day before was overtime. That was the day Kevin wasn't. So there's a possible, myself or Chris could pull the overtime on the 4th. He is available on all the dates that someone else is scheduled, like myself or Chris, and not on the schedule. So those are a possible, like the 15th and 16th, I'm scheduled Friday, and that would leave an overtime day if Chris wanted that as overtime, that's fine. If not, I could ask Kevin to work the 15th, and I could work the 16th, and that would eliminate an overtime day for us.
And this is all contingent on getting a letter of agreement or a letter of understanding. What's it actually called? Letter of agreement with the union.
Correct.
Okay.
Because that has been submitted to the president of the bargaining unit of the IAFF, Captain Piper. So we're just now kind of waiting on that.
Okay. I'm certainly not a spokesperson for the union, but I know what was conveyed to me today is they wanted to know, were you guys willing to physically sit down at the table and talk about this, or did you want to do it through email, or?
I guess sit down and talk about what you're presenting, or what, I guess.
Well, what would go on between you and the union? Because what was conveyed to me, for instance, was that they were asked to give up first right of refusal. And I know from a union standpoint, there is going to be, why would I give up a benefit without sitting down and seeing what the backside of that is? And so I told them I would, not as a spokesperson, but just as a chief officer, ask for you guys.
Well, that would have to be an
experience.
official reply from Captain Piper and the bargaining unit to tip the hat. I mean, I think as a board, collectively, we're willing to have any and all discussions.
Okay.
Whether it's in person, if it goes through personnel or the fire committee, to keep that ball rolling.
Okay, I'm aware of that.
Yeah, but we need to get a response so that we can entertain some potential thoughts.
I guess I'm a little confused, but if it's just you and Chris, who's gonna sit down and discuss this first right of refusal? It would just be Chris?
Well, I imagine it would be Ken and Chris until Ken's last official day.
Good.
Exactly. So.
They're all members of the union
There's
until their last day.
The bargaining unit is still whole until the 30th, when that was Captain Piper's last day. After that, it's a whole nother discussion. We're just trying to do everything at every expense to afford every member to have some input.
Okay, thank you.
So anyway, yeah, just again, not to be redundant, but if you're glancing at the calendar, whatever name you see on the schedule, if there's a red asterisk, that means that Kevin Ginter is also available to pull some hours that day if needed.
That's where his name is at?
Yeah, I inked in for a couple of the situations where I might be able to flip with them. So certainly makes a difference too, as to, because I work in systems like this, where even with the transports, we make calls 7 runs in a 24-hour period. I've worked in systems, Russ, where we kept a running log, and and that was split between 2 cars. My car would pull 24 calls in 24 hours, and that makes a huge difference. So, yeah, by the end of that day, you're ready to go home and relax. So. But yeah, I wrote in there Dave or Chris, for either one of us could pull that date, or because the day before flop would count, fill that. So.
Yeah, and yes, Michelle.
This is just a question I have. Why are we keeping the north side open as opposed to the south side? Why did we choose that?
And just
Go
before you
ahead.
answer that, just instead of roaming, I need you to stay somewhat close to a mic so that everybody can hear you.
Okay.
So,
We did that based on the geography and the fact that from the north side, we actually have a lot more rural area to cover that is not serviced by infrastructure. In other words, numbers of hydrants. So,
So we have less on the north?
correct.
Okay.
yeah,
So,
we have 0, well, we don't have 0, but from Hamilton Road north in the township is where the water infrastructure stops.
Okay.
And that was kind of got into where previous discussions have taken place with residents' concerns, not knowing battle or firefighting operations, on-scene tactics for firefighting. Their complaint was just that, why is the tanker being stationed at south side? Because you have the infrastructure. You need that portable water
I did
where you
have
don't
that.
have the infrastructure.
I've asked that question before.
yeah.
Yes, Laura?
I guess you reached out to Sanborn, you reached out to Maple Ridge, and you didn't reach out to the city because you said you wanted to get your ducks in a row.
So to speak, yeah.
But what does that mean exactly?
Well,
I mean, what are, I guess it,
crunching the numbers, we know we're gonna need Sanborn to come, say at least to Squaw Bay, Partridge Point, if that station's gonna be down, but asking, on a very simplistic basis, asking Presqu'île, I mean, they should know for sure, but asking them to cover down further, south into our township, when the north station's gonna be manned 24/7 anyway.
so have
It's
you
gonna
talked
make
to
some.
Presqu'île yet?
No, Bill is Presqu'île
Oh, Bill's
and City
Presqu'île
Hall.
and the
That-
city,
Yeah, that's why I
okay.
threw that in
Okay,
there.
so so you'll talk to Bill about Presqu'île and the city.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he's gotta be aware of
Okay.
what's going on and
Okay.
what may possibly happen, so.
So I guess when do you plan on talking to him?
In the next day or two,
Oh, okay.
yeah. I'm sorry, I'm wandering again.
Just as long as your meandering stops at a microphone so that everybody can hear you, meander, close to microphones. Diligently stay close to
I
a
have
microphone. Yes,
another
Laura?
question. I'm just kind of wondering, like, how many interviews are taking place and within what type of time frame are these interviews taking place? How many are we interviewing?
Okay, so far, we've completed 3 interviews.
Okay.
There is another one scheduled for tomorrow, and then there's another one scheduled on Tuesday. Unfortunately, out of the 10 to dozen applications I've received, I've contacted everyone by phone at least twice to let them know that we had multiple positions to fill, and if they were still interested, please contact me back. And so far, these are the 5 that made a point to contact me back within a day. I'm still waiting on 3 or 4, kind of give them the benefit of the doubt, but I'm thinking at this point, I'd make, on the remaining applications, I'd make one more phone call, or please, so to speak, and at that point, leave them alone. So if they haven't called me back, I think by the end of the weekend, that's a pretty good indication to me if they're not.
So we had 8 in June that were possibilities.
Yes.
And then Michelle found another 8, and out of those, there were maybe 4.
Right.
So are we going to place another ad in the Alpena News just because we haven't done it in a while to reach out again, or,
Yes,
Well, the Alpena News ad,
Or-
we got 0
or
responses
wherever,
to that. So,
or Indeed, or wherever,
Yeah, I
but it
think
just
we got-
seems,
I think we got almost all of our responses from the Indeed posting.
but to me, it seems like we maybe should try that again.
our ad was out there for months.
Yes. It
And
was,
it cost a lot of money, I'm thinking probably close to $2,000.
Ouch.
Yeah,
Mhm.
so, and this is what we've got, and I don't think running it again, and that, and Indeed is going to get us any more responses. I don't know if there's like any trade papers or any, like we have MTA.
Right.
Yeah, no, actually, we've talked about that before. I don't know so much at a board meeting, but as personnel in there is MPFFU, which is the state representative for the IAFF. They publish a periodical, but they also have a web page. We could put on there, because I think that's normally, other than Indeed, would be the first place somebody would go looking for a full-time job on, on a professional, I don't wanna say professional department, but on a full-time department,
Okay.
so.
Do they charge, or is it something that they provide with you being a member of them?
Honestly, Laura, I'd have to ask.
I was just curious,
I've-
sometimes you can,
I've been out of the union since I left the city and don't get the publication anymore, so,
Okay.
I don't, but I certainly can check with and through Ken,
okay.
to make sure we do that, so. Are you guys good with the calendar and my explanation so far as to
Yeah.
how?
I'm just concerned to get a letter of something signed so that this plan can be put in place. Because right now, we couldn't put it in place until we have some, maybe not this letter of understanding, but some form of letter of understanding.
correct.
Well, yeah, agreed. I don't want to wait until the 26th or 27th to be able to pull the trigger on this for.
I feel the same way.
What is Captain Piper on duty Southside today?
He is not. I believe Captain Clements is on duty today down south, and Captain Honeycutt is up here, so.
So do we need a board vote on a letter of understanding?
I think it has to be talked to with the union first.
Has to go to them first.
Right, let's say they agree to something, the board has to officially take a vote on it.
I would think so.
That would be the bargaining unit unless this board affords said capabilities to the personnel, and I think that's a slippery slope. So the reality is, we may be having another special meeting.
But we do have a meeting on the
We
28th.
have a meeting on the 28th, but if we wait till the 28th, then we're 2 days away from critical failure.
Yeah.
Because the reality is, we've had three applications, 3 interviews thus far. Of those 3, all very nice young men. The one response last night, that individual would be available potentially inside 2 weeks with a 2-week notice. The first one, even if he was offered the position, is looking at mid-late February. Did not ask the question of the second prospective employee. But we have to, I applaud you for bringing this forward. We have a moving piece that still has to be nailed down with that letter of agreement. But, I mean, we need to, given the consideration that we are 13 days out of being down to a single employee, and if that isn't agreed to by the bargaining unit prior to the 30th, where do we find ourselves at that point? But trustee Foley?
I'd just like to add one other thing to those 3 interviews. None of them could fit in the shoes of taking place of our officers. Maybe in a year and a half or 2 years they could. They're all very inexperienced. I don't even know if they would fit in the firefighter. I'm a little green on that stuff. I don't even know if they could fill those shoes.
Trustee
Well,
Reiner?
that raises a whole bunch of questions for me. One's liability, because that's what lawyers think about, right? But the other is, you know, how, I mean, do any of these 3 candidates that you talked about have any firefighting or paramedic, or EMT experience or licensing? Secondly, how long does it take to get there? Third, what is required for them to even fight a fire? What's required in training, what's required in licensing, what's required in just experience? I drove ambulance for 3 years of my life. And back then, we only had to have a certain level of training, which is much less than today. And I assume that firefighting is at least as complex, if not more complex, in terms of what somebody needs to know for their own safety, for the safety of the people they work with, and so on. So that brings me back to liability. We put people that don't have that experience on deck, on duty, and put them out there. If they get hurt, if somebody else gets hurt because they don't know what they're doing, if some citizen gets hurt as a result of their inexperience or not knowing what they're doing, where do we stand with that? Where does our insurance coverage come in, and what do they require for that training, experience, and licensing? Those are questions I have.
Okay, well, let me address those. For the requirements for the state of Michigan to be a paid-on-call firefighter, you have to have had to complete firefighter 1 course. Upon hiring, huh?
How many hours?
That is approximately 170 hours right now. I'm teaching one right now at the college, Fire 1 and 2. The state also requires that within a year of being hired on a full-time fire department, you either should have or have completed within a year firefighter 2, which is a 240-hour course. Like I said, I'm in the middle of one at the college right now teaching one. We teach them together.
To get to 170 hours, how much time, calendar time does that take? Are these inappropriate questions?
By no
Watching your
means.
eyes, so
No. Thanks you for noticing.
Other than doing a full-time 8-hour-a-day, every day a week academy, generally in rural areas like this, our academies can consist of 2 nights a week and Saturdays. So generally, the 2 nights a week is the classroom portion. The firefighting curriculum is most frequently pretty much, it's kind of a 60-40. It's about 40% book work, and the majority of it is hands-on practical. The Saturdays is what we reserve the practical for. So that, I think a 60-40.
So those 8 hours, 8 hours, 8 hours, those are all hours towards the 170, or do they require?
Yeah, well, 12 to 2. Like I say, we find it most economical and feasible to teach the firefighter 1 and 2 concurrent, rather than having somebody go through 1 and then come back a couple months later and complete the hours for 2.
So we're talking about 4 to 6 months.
Yeah, we start like this one, we started October 1st, was our first class, and we'll be finishing up their practical and written tests for final for state certification. Will be around the first week in May.
So any of the 3 candidates you've interviewed?
They all have fire 1 and 2.
They all already have fire 1 and 2?
They already do.
Okay.
So,
So that meets that criteria? They do?
yes.
So they could come on board, operate a rig, go to a fire, enter a fire?
Yes. And they also all have at least a now participates in what we call the National Registry, which is a, entire continental. That basically means they can get licensed in Michigan, any other state that holds NREMT levels, like Colorado, Florida, Texas, whatever, they can go from Michigan. I think all they have to do is challenge the written test and practical, then they can get that state's license.
They don't have that now for free, don't
They
have
do.
EMT?
They do.
Oh, they do, okay. And is that basic for what we need and what we can
Yes,
put on the
because
road?
we're keeping our basic life support and being, as far as the, I share your concerns as far as, command of a scene. And something we've talked about internally is, an agreement, well, for all practical purposes, Christopher and I are gonna be the only two officers, left on the department for a period of months. So there will be an agreement between us that we need somebody to serve on a fire, not necessarily on a medical. Don't have a problem at all with them going out and running an everyday normal medical, but I think for a fire scene, you gotta have command personnel present, and that would be, until we get hired back up, that would be Christopher or I, to make sure we make every fire scene. So there would be a command personnel there. So I don't want you to think I wanna bring these guys in and say on week 2, go, okay, best of luck. I most definitely am gonna want to mentor them, hold their hand, kind of shake them out, so to speak, so I got a good idea of where they are. So, just from a personal standpoint, let me tell you, my oldest son, I can tell you, I would say on the job, he's a firefighter. And when he came of age and got his first fire, it was a whole different world for me. I didn't care about, I was.
I have a question after.
But once I knew so I'm gonna treat them like my son was going in the fire with them. I wanna know that they have.
Well, it's one thing to have the training, it's another thing
It's
to
another
go in
thing to
your
have the
first fire and stay.
Yes.
Now you can meander with a microphone.
No, because I'll be doing this. So, did you have?
Yeah, I just have a question. So let's say we do hire 3 or 4 people. Now, none of these that you're interviewing has their officer training.
Only one of the whole.
And I think that's part of our union contract is that we only hire officers, correct? Or,
Not my understanding.
Okay.
No, we've hired, the department has a long history of quite frequently of hiring people at a firefighter 2 level.
okay.
And then giving them, actually, we were talking about that last night, I thought it was 2, but by contract, I think it's 3 years they have to complete their fire officer 1 and 2.
Okay. And how, like,
And that's gonna take about a year.
okay.
Yeah.
And so if we do hire these people who don't have a great deal of experience, and you and Chris would have to be mentoring them for, how long do you think it takes to mentor someone? On average, I know everybody's a little different, somebody might be 3 months, somebody might be a year, but on average, how long before you feel that the average?
Actually, covering that, I think to be consistent, because we normally give new hires a 1-year probationary period, I would give it all of that.
Okay,
Now, I will grant you, I probably might run into somebody that I think is exceptional and kind of ahead of the curve, but I'm still gonna, I might feel comfortable with them, but I'm still gonna keep my eye on them for that year. So believe me, this is now, this is a total game changer. This is gonna be a whole different department within a month and a half. It's not gonna be anything, like it used to. You guys have heard me state both privately and publicly before that the deal I had with the guys when I first stood up with this job is I'm never gonna take command of a fire away from you unless you ask me to. And that's out the window now.
that's off the table.
That is
We'll
off
take
the
it.
table.
Okay.
Cause those guys I knew, I worked with them, I trusted, I watched them on scenes, and I'm like, like butter and bread. They knew their job. With this guys, it's gonna be a whole new group of people that aren't, so it's,
So you have to
I
learn
guess
to
what
get
I'm
to know
telling you
them
is
and
I'm
their-
gonna be stepping my game up, and I will be there and will be in command, maybe with other than Chris, but one of us will be there, and, cause ultimately, whether I'm there or not, I'm responsible for everything that goes on at the scene, so.
My biggest concern right now is what's gonna happen on December 30th when we have to close a station, how that's gonna affect services to everybody on the south side. I feel like that's our immediate, let's figure that out.
Well, and if I may interject to that, I think that, that discussion that takes place with Bill Forbush and, the operations of mutual aid on the northern end from PI, and what it's gonna look like with an unmanned south station, I think that probably the mayor and I should probably be sitting down in that discussion and say, what are our options? Because I don't think we're, although it is a very serious and utmost time crunching concern, we do right now, we have a meeting on the 28th before we have to take any board action or expansion, because my fear is we're looking at it and discussing it as a mutual aid agreement, but if we have no reciprocity, then mutual aid is not mutual aid at that point. So what is that going to look like financially? What is that going to look like in any contractual basis? Because at that point, come the meeting on the 28th that's scheduled, we're going to be looking in 48 hours, we're going to be potentially unmanning a station. So I have no issue reaching out and making sure that that conversation takes place sooner rather than later, because that's our neighbor to the north and, you know, the city itself. So we just got to keep working. Norm?
Can Kevin Ginter, command can he grab a rig and go in command, be in command of that fire?
Yes, is on, first on scene, yeah. It's not, it's not uncommon in the fire service for people, I would term as a line firefighter. There are many instances, and this is throughout the United States, not just in Michigan, where a line firefighter, in other words, someone that doesn't hold any type of management rank like a lieutenant or captain or something, is gonna be the first one on scene. And that's part of our training, is to be able to manipulate, manage, oversee that scene until an officer shows up and can relieve you of command. That's part of our training. So, and Kevin has enough years in experience, and I've been working with him for what, 2.5, 3 years now. I feel very comfortable with him in that position. And I don't know if you guys are all aware of his background, but he's his years as a firefighter, he's actually deployed overseas as I want to call it would be a military subcontractor, and worked at federal DOD bases and such, which includes not only aircraft crash and rescue, but structural firefighting as well. So
So what I'm hearing is that when the whistle goes off and he's on duty, he's gonna go respond, he'll be in charge until either you or Chris get there.
correct.
So you or Chris are gonna have to attend everything that happens.
If it's a fire, one of us will be going, yes. Which is normally what I try to strive to do
How many
anyway.
fires do we have a month, on average? I mean, is it daily?
Fires?
Yeah.
Or a year?
Yeah, I think we need to look at the annual. I mean,
Yeah.
we're,
Okay,
what, less than
so-
half a dozen annually?
Okay.
Yeah, as far as a full-blown structure fire,
Experience on fires, 'cause we
yeah,
don't
I'm
have
gonna,
a lot.
yeah, less than 20 a year,
Okay.
so. And that's
Even
an,
Field fires or wooded fire,
Yeah, we get, nominally, actually, that's why we got the brush truck from the DNRs, is we have, depending on the year, we can go years where we have, you know, a dozen grass fires in a several week period, and the next year we might have none or one. But they're, given our geographical location, that's a very real threat, which is why we have the brush truck and the mutual aid compact with the DNR fire, so.
Chief Bully is-
So how well are we covered from, I believe it's the 21st is when our first exodus starts?
21st, we have,
Honeycutt.
Captain Honeycutt. 27th, we have Captain Clements.
Okay, so
And
30th,
30th would
we
be
have
Captain
Captain
Piper, so is, to the best of my knowledge, we're good up until the 30th.
Yeah.
do you
So-
have that area that's covered?
Those,
For
those
both
overtime
stations.
slots are, those,
For both
those shifts are
stations.
covered, yes. So they're really the 30th and January or 31st is our, is gonna be our drop dead date. So,
So I guess, obviously, we're doing a lot of things concurrent right now. We're going through applications, worked with, I'll come in any time of the day, any day of the week to get these things accomplished. Trustee Kroll and I think we have a direction with, background checks for this emergence need, which we'll probably start running concurrent as well. But one of the questions that we have not asked is, do we have any internal staff that is willing to, whether they have retired or not, to stay on for an additional period of time?
Yeah, because Clemens is not taking other employment, from what I
Yeah.
understand. Could
Because
could
everybody else that has other employment can't come back on,
correct.
so.
So have we talked to
I-
Captain Clemens of possibly putting off his retirement maybe till March 1st?
I spoke with him this morning in Candid, and he said he would rather not.
I can't hear you, Dave.
I'm sorry, I spoke with Captain Clements this morning, and he said he would rather not. He wants to be done as of his,
27th.
the
So we know
27th.
that.
So that was something that had been on the table, but I needed to pin him down on it today, so.
Nathan, you mentioned about you and the mayor
Yes.
sitting down. Were you in that discussion? Would that also include Chief Robbins and Chief Orbush? Like the
Yeah,
four of you
that's
sitting down?
what I mentioned, was that
I just,
that conversation would be
Clarifying.
all four
I just wanted to clarify.
individuals, because,
so the four of you.
Um,
Okay.
Yeah, and so I'm not holding back, just having what I would call senior moments. I do want you guys to know that I've reached out to some other people. I know that either, and again, it depends, city fire, because the union contract has some constricts. But as far as the air base, there's one or two people out there that have reached out to me and said, you know, is it possible for me to work, you know, one or two 24-hour shifts to help fill some of those in? I hate assuming, but my assumption would be, what I told them is that would be probably possible, but I'm thinking at a very minimum, we'd need to bring them on as a paid-on call from a legal standpoint before we let them. I know they can't like, we can't subcontract guys from the airbase being federal. They're not allowed to just, but if we brought them on as a paid-on call, and then said, yeah, you can have two 24-hour shifts a month or something like that. I'm just waiting to hear back from them.
well,
So-
and that, sorry, Trustee Bully had a question.
I'm just curious, why haven't you contacted the city yet? Just curious. I mean, they're kind of like that, you know, maybe a key in this puzzle, I don't know.
Oh, well, in the first phase of this is for me to go after people that are able to work on their days off. And I know from experience, other than actually contracting with the city proper to provide somebody at the station, union precludes, they call it the two-hat rule. A good example of that is when I lived out on Indian Reserve Road. I was in Wilson Township, and they were begging for people, and I was gonna join their volunteer department, and I was not allowed to as a full-time member of city fire, because they considered that a conflict of interest. So I guess what I'm telling you, Norma, is I haven't, because of just what happened right now. I think the only way we could get people from the city to work at the south side is if we had a formal contract through the city council and with Chief Forbush that said, yeah, we'll set a man there 24/7.
But you haven't discussed that yet. We don't know that for sure, do we?
No,
Okay.
but I do know that we can do it that way, but I know that I can't go down there and say how many of you on your off days are willing to.
I understand that
So,
too.
yeah.
Yeah, because then that precludes Honeycutt and Piper and Gallagher.
And Galloway, right, they all are gonna have to turn their gear in, because they're not gonna be, able to or allowed to do, paid on-call work for us as a city employee, so.
Are there any other assets and resources that we're not even considering? Are there any other staff that have the training to have an impact in these discussions?
The left on my roster right now, after those, resignations, is the only, other than Ginter and Galloway, the only two people, I was able to, look at, was, Tim Mogi, and he had his try here some years ago and said he's not interested. He's happy to do paid on call, but doesn't feel comfortable working 24s anymore. Another one, Tom, I thought about,
Tom Tolan?
yeah, Tom Tolan, I thought about asking, but I know he's working odd shift at the hospital, and it would be hard to pin him down to a 24.
Well, and who knows with mid-Michigan if they would even allow him. That's another contractual potential.
Yeah, but as far as people that are qualified to stay here by themselves and that are competent enough, I think, to hop on the truck, take it to a fire scene, and start, at least initiate fire attack until somebody else head up. We're pretty thin right now. Norm?
Yeah, when we talk about paid on calls, how many paid on calls do we have that are active?
We're down. We have around 20 right now, and 5 of them are what I would consider inactive, because they've either asked for a leave of absence, or they just haven't been to any organized meeting or training for the last year, which by state rules now precludes them from being active. So,
and to follow Trustee Foley's vein of conversation, okay, so we're looking at replacement of full-time officers, and we're just now starting to touch on the paid-on-call contingent of employees. Are there active paid-on-call that meet all of those parameters that, if we're having an open discussion, is there not a way that we could look at revamping, depending on what comes back with the letter of agreement, obviously, to explore and expound upon those responsibilities of the paid-on-call in a manner or not? I mean, because I know that we have some wonderful employees on paid-on-call roster that made a very vocal statement of doing this for service. Is there a way that we could compensate for the services that they would provide for the citizenry of the township? I mean, I think that's why we've called this meeting, is because we need to have an open dialogue. Because
I'm not even sure what you asked.
if there's well, I'll dumb it down for you, Michelle. Balovich. Basically, my point is, we have employees current that are on the paid-on-call roster that meet some of the criteria that we're discussing for full-time replacement. Is there not a mechanism to incentivize our existing roster, our existing employee base, to fulfill this need.
You mean to work 24-hour
You
shifts?
need to come and work a shift at the station.
Duty shifts, regular shifts, they're in.
I think
24
all that has
hours.
to do with the letter of understanding.
It's all
It's-
wrapped.
everything's contingent on getting
But
that
we're
done.
here to
8 hour
have this
shifts, 12 hours.
discussion.
Right, 8
And
hours.
so if we don't have it as a board now, we're not gonna have it until we meet again.
Right,
So,
I'm just,
so that's, yeah, a lot of things are pertain to the tipping of the hat of the letter of agreement.
So is it reaching out to
So-
those people and asking them
Well,
if
and
they're
that's,
interested in?
that's my question. I mean, are
Right.
we,
so can we reach out to Captain Piper today and say, can we set up a time to meet about the letter of agreement? Because I feel like everything's contingent on getting this worked out. So how quickly can we meet with him? I mean,
when is he
If-
on
if-
shift again?
do we have to wait for him to be on shift? I mean,
Day after tomorrow, I believe, because
so Sunday?
he,
No, Saturday.
correct.
I mean.
He
if need
will,
be, I
he may
can-
be available tomorrow because even though he's not assigned on shift, I know he's gonna come in to pull the transfer that we had pre-scheduled. So he may be available. Again, I can't speak for him, but I do know he's gonna be in at some point in time tomorrow morning, to run a transport, so.
Well, if the personnel want to reach out to them, see if we can get set up as fast as we can and try and
Yeah,
get
I mean-
it resolved.
Do you wanna give him a call today and try to schedule something to sit down and discuss that letter of agreement for tomorrow?
What time is your transport tomorrow?
I believe it's at 7:45 in the morning and then again around 10:30.
Is that to and from the doctor's office?
Hyperbarics. Hyperbarics. We generally, just, this is another nuance of the business, but, we can transport to facilities for treatment, but we don't generally do, if we go to a doctor's office, it has to be, you don't get paid for it. It has to be considered something other than a clinic or doctor office, or, because insurance won't pay for us to pick somebody up at their house, take them to a doctor office. So the only doctors we do see is they have to be in like a hospital setting, so. But this one is hyperbaric treatment that she gets almost, I believe, every other day, daily, for wound care. So, to answer your question, Nate, I have been down through the list, and not to be redundant, but the people that we pull from the paid on calls to step up into the full-time positions are the people that we call the irregular aides. They're in kind of a category of their own because they are the only people we know of have demonstrated all their competencies, have been checked out on every unit, found competent that we trust. If we're not on station or on another call, we know are capable and competent to pull a truck and go on a run. And that list of 8-hour people, unfortunately, is, yeah, and that's Mr. Ginter. There used to be 4 or 5,
Because
but
technically, as of our last board action, that position doesn't exist anymore.
correct.
So,
So,
I guess I just have a question. So if we have 20 paid on call, 5 are inactive, that means we have 15 people. And then you said you pull only a certain amount of those 15 people because you know they can do what needs to be done and you're confident with them, right?
and we'll get back to that, but just so you guys know, I've asked people that haven't done the competencies, are you interested in getting out on the truck so you can do some of these fill-in shifts? And they're like, I can't with my full-time job.
But
can't
I'm
get
just
some,
wondering
but-
from the last time you asked them that till now, maybe circumstances have changed in some of their lives or work or whatever.
Well, that's been within the last week.
Okay.
So,
All right.
believe
I wasn't
me,
sure. I
I've,
mean, I didn't know if it was been a year or
yeah,
whatever.
I've been shaking that list out, so.
Okay. And I have another part, it's a little off of this, but it still pertains. So it's my understanding that, Kevin Genter does the billing for the non-emergency transports. Or he's been doing them all along, billing the insurance companies and things like that.
No, well, MHR does the billing. What Kevin does
Okay,
is when we're done at the end of the day, or the end of the shift, I should say, with all of our run reports, they go into a box.
uh-huh,
When Kevin comes in, he pulls them out of the box, and what he's doing is double checking them to make sure that the form as it's filled out has met all of the conditions set forth by MHR to be submitted.
okay,
So in other words, there's, insurance companies look for keywords, and there's some information you can leave off a run report, it's not a problem, but other information if you leave off, they just kick the bill out and say we're not paying it. Kevin's the one that just sits down and says, okay, this looks complete, it's got everything I know the insurance company wants, and then it goes to MHR. He doesn't technically bill, they
Okay.
do. He's just kind of our second set of eyes to make sure we're not sending them bad reports.
so with that said, are we up to date? Are we months behind? Are we, I mean, how up to date are we with him reviewing that stuff and sending it to MHR?
Right now, because of his schedule, I would say if we're behind at all, it would only be like 2 shifts. Because as soon as those
So
come
that'd
in,
be
you got,
48 hours.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
so it's pretty current,
very,
okay.
yeah, because he tries to get them out as soon as
Okay.
and again, he doesn't work every day, so.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure we weren't far behind, you know what I mean, on that part, so, okay.
So, and just so you know too, there's been a couple guys coming in every day to get the reconciliation caught up, so they've been working pretty hard at it, so.
Are there any other questions or comments for the chief?
Or the chief?
So I guess what is our plan right now?
Meet with the city.
So-
Meet with the city.
The,
and
the,
meet
what,
with
what
the
I,
union.
what I've heard, through this conversation, our plan moving forward from today's table is one, to have, trustee Kroll reach out to Captain Piper, to lock down a time and day, to discuss the parameters of a letter of agreement, of which I would implore that, that those discussions include our labor attorney. And a second spin-off of a direction that needs to take place is that I will reach out to the mayor and Chief Forbush, working with Chief Robbins' schedule, to sit down and discuss what it would look like if we have to entertain the potential of unmanning Southside Station, and what an expansion of an agreement would be, or would that be a conversion to an auto aid scenario? All those moving parts. I see those are the 2 primaries, addressing the union, addressing our mutual aid and community partners. Until we get the LOA kind of dotted, some of these ancillary discussions of a direction are unknown. Yes, Laura.
The background checks, are those on the 3 that have been interviewed, or
I'm-
those starting to take place as well?
Yep, trustee Kroll pointed me in a direction, and I will be starting those probably today.
Is the
For
sheriff's-
all, it's, at this point in time, the mechanisms, and you can actually describe it better, so Cash, would you like to,
So, I mean, there are a few issues we have to resolve, but, I think we're in a sense of urgency here, because we need staff. So there's, it's more a short-term issue and a long-term issue. We're gonna try to see what we can do in-house possibly, while we work out details.
What do you mean in-house by in the township?
Well, there are things we could do ourselves as part of a background, which could be a cost savings as well, things like that. So we're gonna see what we can do on our end, and then, we'll come up with a plan and bring something back in regards to across the board for the whole township, not just the fire department.
Right.
So we're continuing to work on that, and obviously we got a little bit of time here, so, but we're gonna try and put some expedients on it.
What kind of things can we do in-house? I mean, just for example.
Well, there are certain things that we can go and do, so like an iChat on an individual, you can get, I mean, we can do that ourselves.
Oh, what
A
is
criminal
that?
history,
iChat?
basically a criminal history check. We can do that.
Like your eye, get your eyes.
Like the letter I chat. It's
So
a
It's a little going on me, which is illegal to do. So, we can't do that. And it's not as good. But
Right, but
What was
we-
that, Trustee Reinhardt? I'm sorry, I couldn't.
Yeah, I
what
couldn't
was-
understand.
Law Enforcement Information Network.
Oh, is that LEAP that you're
Lean-
talking?
Lean.
Lean.
Oh, LEAP.
That can only be used, and it can't be used for background checks.
Okay.
So iChat is the alternative. You're relying on private folks to search all the counties and get all that information. Sometimes it's not as complete, sometimes it's more complete.
Right, so there are things that we can do, some things we can't do.
So have we even like called the references of these people?
The original packet I had,
Yeah.
I called references. The new packet
Uh-huh.
I got, that's like the day I got that, I started calling them
Okay,
and
so
asking
we're
them for,
doing that.
so.
Just a lot of different moving parts, like I said, we're gonna have to come up with a formalized plan at some point here, going for the future, but like I said, right now, we're in a sense of urgency on what we gotta get some things done. And, but, you know, it's moving, so,
So we're moving forward.
yeah.
Okay.
I will say this about calling references, quite often it's a waste of time. But you need to have the experience of knowing what questions to ask. Because if you don't ask the right questions of a reference, you're not likely gonna get any.
And I'm personally not a big
Helpful
fan of calling references, because when people call me for a reference, I will only give you the dates that the person worked here,
Right.
so.
But
that
there
doesn't
are
tell
other
you-
questions that could be asked that sometimes they'll be responses to that will help you.
The best question being, if given the opportunity, would you rehire this individual?
See, I won't even answer that
That's a
one.
good question.
That is the perfect
What
question.
did you say?
I say we don't answer that question, either way.
Yeah, well. So,
Lawyers are terrible.
yeah. Aaron, do you have any other comments or
Yeah,
questions?
so-
as we-
We're good through the end of the month, per se. And this is to cover through January.
Yes.
That's assuming we may have somebody hired by February 1st. What would happen if we don't have anybody or we don't have enough?
By February 1st?
Yes.
Well, we'd still be in the same status, which would be South Station unmanned until I can get enough people on the roster to start rotating through there. So, and which is a good discussion to have with, city fire and us, is like, what are we gonna do in the meantime, and so.
So, outside of that, I mean, we have two big obstacles to overcome right now. We got our bargaining unit that would need to sign off and sit down with personnel and labor council to reach that agreement. And then we also have to sit down and talk about all possible ramifications, fees, expansion of a mutual aid, or if it falls off the mutual aid because of the lack of reciprocity, that we have to look at an auto aid agreement for the facilitation in the short term of South Station.
Which
Am I-
means a contract.
Which would mean a contract. So both of these actions, staying concurrent, must be addressed no later than the construction of our agenda for our meeting on the 28th, unless we call a special meeting prior to the 28th. Which is very tight because we got the holidays and it's gonna be,
Well, next week's only 3 days.
And,
So-
and
So the
if next
agenda-
week, there's 3 days, and if we need to call a meeting,
No.
I'm gonna call a meeting.
No,
But the
that's what I
agenda for
mean.
the 28th will need to go out on the 23rd.
Correct,
So
that's
next
what I,
Wednesday.
So maybe we'll have a meeting next week, Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday.
all we need is 18 hours to make OMA.
Yeah.
And if we have, actionable items that need to be discussed, and they come to my attention, then, it'll be my responsibility to call said meeting.
Will you be able to have your meeting between now and the 23rd?
With, the mayor and Chief Warbush,
Yes.
I'm gonna be calling as soon as we adjourn this meeting and setting up that discussion. Because there's a lot of moving parts
So
external.
Are
Well,
you
I think we're
available
in
for that meeting at any times, or is there any times that you won't be available?
I'll try to keep my calendar as clear as possible for,
Yeah.
I mean, I just feel like we can't even look at weekends or anything right now. It's just like,
Oh,
if,
right.
if someone has to meet on Saturday morning, let's do it on Saturday morning. I mean,
Every
if you
day
guys
of the
need me
week
to
ends
come
in
in
Y.
at any time,
So,
I will rearrange my schedule to be here if needed.
Russ, you had a comment?
Well, I was gonna say to Dave, I think, and I'm not used to the protocol of calling the chief, so that's.
no, that's fine.
There's no use, Dave. But, I feel bad for the position you've been put in. I mean, given the stance you took on behalf of your men and all that's happened since, I feel really bad for that. But, I will tell you that I'm personally, very concerned for the continuity of this department. And I don't know if we can solve this problem. It's gonna take a whole new structure.
Yes.
And you commented on that.
Yes.
But it's also going to take, I mean, we're not in a real good situation.
No, we're not.
So, I'll tell you that I'm looking for other alternatives right now. And so you need to know that because I wanna be convinced that we have a solution that not only, that primarily protects the citizens of this township, both fire and for first responders. And actually, the first responder part of it might be the easiest part to fix. But, I think, I feel really bad for the situation you've been put in, and I'm sorry that that's the case. But, none of these solutions may work that you're trying to work on right now, but we have to commend you for trying to work on them. We'll see what we've got after we're ready to reconvene, I guess. Mr. Chairman?
That is correct, trustee Reinhardt. I think we have, sound direction, for the 2 principles that we need to, accomplish in short order. Are there any additional tasks that need to be, fulfilled, with, addressing the labor end of it? And because, as trustee Reinhardt stated, I mean, we're talking about this, but I think for continuity of our community, everything's on the table. And so we'll see in our conversation with, the mayor and, Chief Warbush, what is on the table in that regard and what that looks like, and just continue to move forward.
I would just ask that we all kind of all of us communicate on, hey, we have this meeting is scheduled on this day, and we're, these things are kind of getting done, just so we all kind of are on the same page,
Well, I'd almost volunteer to sit in on anything, but we got reporters and all that too, I realize. So, the beauty of my situation is for the next 2 or 3 weeks, I don't have any, scheduled court hearings, but, so
Well-
I can be available.
Well, and to that end, trustee Reinhardt, being, the newest member of this, board, I'm not afraid to offer you the opportunity to sit down with, the meeting that Chief and I will be sitting in, to have your, position. As long as we have,
As well?
as long as we don't have, no, he's got his task.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, Cash needs to be focused on one thing, otherwise that squirrel's gonna run up a different tree. So, Yeah, I mean, we are in a time crunch of, let's keep working, and that's what we've been doing. If there are any other comments for the chief, or chief, do you have any, final comments as we, turn around and move forward? Because right now, unless a special meeting is called, we'll be addressing, all topics of fire department on the meeting on the 28th. If there's nothing good for the order, I mean, or for Chief Robbins at this point, I guess, is there any further discussion, by the board?
I would just say if we develop, make progress on these other issues, then it might be beneficial to have another special meeting next week, so we can get those ironed out, so we don't have to worry about it on Christmas.
Yeah.
Well, not only that, we can't make a decision the day after the 30th. We've got to make a decision on the direction to go before the 30th.
Well, and to that end, Trustee Reinhardt, we've known that we're gonna be facing an employee shortage for a year. Good, bad, or indifferent, we've known that. And so, shame on us for not being proactive, but here we are. We have a direction leading this meeting, and if we have solid, positive ground, I will be calling a special meeting prior to the 28th. Is there any other discussion by the board? I will, at this point in time, if there's no further discussion, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion.
We have a motion on the table by Trustee Polly. Is there support?
I'll support that.
It's been moved and supported. Is there further discussion? All those in favor of adjournment signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, the same. Meeting adjourned.
The time.
2:47.
Thank you.
Thank you.